Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Martin. I'm going to kickstart my first video with a look at PCB manufacture, and specifically I'm going to compare two of the main players in this space from a perspective of a maker doing this as a hobby. So who are those two main players? You've probably heard of both of them and probably even seen some videos sponsored by each of them. So let me just get that out of the way. The boards I've made here I've paid for myself, and I've received no sponsorship from either of the manufacturers under test, who are, first of all, JLCPCB. I've used JLC for a few years, and this will be the 16th PCB that I've ordered through them. So I've quite a lot of experience with this one. Secondly, I'm going to look at PCBWay. A few of my friends have used them and would recommend them. However, there has always been a distinguishable price difference between them and JLCPCB, and that has swayed me towards using JLC in the past. Let's take a look at the boards I'm going to get made. These are controllers for an ELS, or electronic lead screw. There are a few open source projects out there, including a very popular one by the YouTuber Clow42, but that project didn't quite meet my requirements. I'd also seen a very new project by Not an Engineer with some additional development by Jack from scratch called Teensy ELS. I've taken this project and developed it further, adding support for the ESP32 processor and added some circuit board designs to support that. The design was initially created in Circuit Maker, which I've recently fallen out of love with. That'll probably be the topic of a future video. But anyway, it's a simple two-layer design, which is what I'm going to base my comparison here on. Let's start with the ordering process. Both have a very simple process which allows you to upload your Gerber files to the website and then allows you to select options such as solder mask color, board thickness, and surface finish. Both sites were user-friendly and give you an instant quote which would change as you select the different options. In both cases, the minimum order is 5 boards, but at this price point they're offering it really isn't a problem. So here I'm going to be focusing on the basic two-layer board, but it is worth mentioning that there are loads of options on both of these websites, and it does seem that PCBWay have a wider range of options than JLC. For example, PCBWay offer 12 different surface finishes, as opposed to JLC's 3. Hassle with lead, lead-free hassle, and gold Enig. Both offer a solder paste stencil at a very reasonable cost if you're doing your own SMD components. I don't usually bother and opt for hand soldering my components to the board. In both cases, green boards will get processed faster. In some cases, for other colours, there will be a delay while they aggregate orders, enough to do a full run of that colour. But normally this doesn't exceed a couple of extra days. The extra cost of the exotic colours varies from nothing to lots. I've struggled to find any consistency with this. Sometimes when I've gone to order, it's been completely free for a particular order. Sometimes it will be a big difference. I suspect there might be a little bit of dynamic pricing going on there to help them fill up production runs. The other option worth paying attention to here is the surface finish. There's a couple of options. You've got either Hassle or Enig. The Hassle comes in 2 variants, leaded or lead-free solder. The Enig is a gold-plated style finish, and there's normally a hefty premium to pay for that. So I don't tend to think it's worth it unless you've got a specific requirement, such as having edge connectors on your board. Now, PCBWay do have a checkbox on their site where you can check that and say that I'm happy to be upgraded at no cost to Enig if it makes sense for them to do that to fill panels for the production process. When it comes to lead or lead-free solder on the Hassle finish, people can get quite heated over this. It might also depend on the regulations where you live. Where I am in the UK, if I'm a hobby user and I'm not selling the products, then I can use a leaded solder with no problem. If I'm going to sell anything, then I have to use lead-free. There's some people quite passionate about how leaded solder is easier to solder, but personally, I think that's a skill problem for them rather than actually dealing with using lead-free solder. In this case, I'm not really comfortable with introducing more lead into the environment, so I will generally go for the lead-free option. The cost difference is normally a couple of quid, or in the case of PCBWay, there's no difference at all. So let's talk about cost. For both boards, I chose the low and slow freight option. It takes a couple of weeks to get here, but it is a lot cheaper than the other options available. PCBWay worked out at $5 for 5 boards and $5.03 for shipping. However, I got an introductory $5 voucher when I created the account. So the whole order cost me $5.03. As far as I know, for my next order, the $5 voucher won't be available, so it would normally go up to $10.03. JLCPCB do a special offer of $2 for 5 boards under 100 by 100 millimeters. So as long as you're staying within those constraints, you can get very cheap boards. And they're currently also offering discounted shipping for $1.50. So that was $3.50 in total. No discount codes. I can repeat that. I can add one order like that to each shopping basket through the checkout system. So as long as I'm not wanting to combine shipping over several orders, I can get that for every single order I do. However, those prices were for the leaded Hassel solder finish. And I did profess to be environmentally conscious, so I upgraded both orders to include the lead-free version. This bumped up the price a little bit. For JLC, it added an additional $1.30, making the total price $4.80, including shipping. That's still pretty good. For PCBWay, it didn't change the cost at all, but they were already charging a little bit more, so it stayed at $5.03. Then I submitted the orders. JLC take your money straight away before sending the order for review, whereas PCBWay do the review first, and then you have to come back and complete the payment once the order has been reviewed. This has pros and cons either way. If I'm honest, I prefer to pay up front, then I know that it's just going to go straight into production as soon as it's ready without me having to come back and make payment later. The flip side to that is if there are enough problems that you don't want to go ahead with the order, you've got to either deal with a refund or have the amount refunded to your account, which is, of course, no problem if you're going to then have a different design made in the future. With the PCBWay order, the order actually did complete review in the middle of the night. And so this meant that it was delayed until the morning when I could then come on and pay for it. Let's start with the review. With JLCPCB, I submitted the order at 9:20 in the evening, and it was reviewed at 4:00 a.m. the following morning. They emailed me to let me know that I had missed the outer border on the board and gave me an option to let me fix it by using the edge of the copper pour that I'd added to that board. In the past, they've made me just submit new Gerber files. So this is a big improvement with them giving you the option for them to fix it for you, if it's fairly obvious how it should be fixed. That order then went into production at 3:15 that day. With PCBWay, it was a similar story. I submitted this order the following day at 3:30 p.m, so I'd already fixed the border issue. However, they did come back to me at 7:30 that evening with another problem. Unfortunately, their system doesn't record all of the details, so when I went back whilst making this video to try and find what that problem was, I had no record of it. However, that was resolved fairly quickly, and the order then passed review later that evening at 11:30. But I didn't see this until the following morning, so it was held up until I paid for it. Then the order went back to engineering for processing to go into production and got bounced back to me again. This time, I had specified that the 4 mechanical holes on the corners of the board should be plated. I didn't do this for any particular reason, but when they came back to me, they said that created a problem in the production process. and gave me two options. They could either remove the plating from those 4 holes, or they could add a sort of an annular ring around those holes to solve that production process, whatever that was. I didn't really care, so I opted to have the plating removed. It's interesting that they raised this problem and JLC with the same set of Gerber files didn't. So obviously it either wasn't a problem for Gerber or they just went and fixed it anyway. So the times in total, JLC took 20 hours to get the board reviewed and into production, and then they took 2.5 days to produce it and ship it. It's worth mentioning at this point that with both manufacturers, I went for the cheapest 2 to 3 day production option. They do allow you to pay a premium for 24-hour production. However, that bumps up the cost dramatically. If you care about that, by all means go for the fast production and the fast shipping options, but it will set you back. The 2 to 3 days it quotes is kind of a worst case scenario. And if you choose some of the other colours, that does go up to 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 days. However, what you may find is that sometimes the board just goes into production straight away and it will be done in a day. This depends on, how they're scheduling designs going onto panels, and if they've got a panel which is the right configuration and they've got a space for your board there, you might find it just goes very quickly. So in some ways it's a little bit unfair for me to compare the production times, as it is somewhat a lottery with both of the manufacturers. Shipping from JLC took 5 days, which is well under the 8 to 12 business days that they quoted. And with PCBWay, again, they quoted 8 to 12 business days and it took 7 days. So both were far better than I expected. And here they are. Let's take a look. So we will start with JLCPCB. Both came boxed and in bubble wrap, and also wrapped in these shrink wrap bubble wrap packages. I've opened them already for the camera. So 5 boards in each. With JLC, I went with the black board, which gives you quite a cool looking board. And let's take a look. This is the PCBWay. And with PCBWay, I went with red. This is really just so that I can tell the two apart just by looking at them. It's quite handy to, if you make several versions of the same board, just colour them all differently so that you can easily figure out which one you're working with. If I'm to look at these, honestly, I can barely tell the difference. I can see the JLC board has some plating on the holes, whereas the PCBWay one doesn't, obviously as I specified it not to. And the PCBWay one is just marginally larger, and that's likely because I actually submitted a outline file for the PCBWay board. Both look otherwise absolutely identical. The tracks are all good. I've tested the continuity on both of these boards between tracks that should be connected, and they all look great. And I'll hopefully be putting prototypes together on both of these to see how they work. But to be honest, for a £5 for each order, you cannot beat this. It is far easier than creating your own boards on a CNC machine or using traditional processes. You get a great quality board. Double layer or 4 layer is also pretty cheap if you want those as well. What can I say? Brilliant value. So there you go. I hope this has been helpful. If it has, please do all the usual stuff, like, subscribe, and click the notification bell. And also let me know down in the comments what you would like to see in future videos. Would you like a review of PCB software, or would you like a series on the building of the electronic lead screw? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.